Let me start with introducing myself. I'm Jay Blythe. I'm the Network Development Leader at Barrett Values Centre, and I'm your host for today's event. Now, this is the second webinar in our run-up to the 2016 CTT International Conference. We've got so many fabulous, such wisdom and wealth of experience in terms of the speakers coming to the conference this September in Toronto. And if you'd like to look more at that agenda, you can find all sorts of information on our website on valuecenter.com. But today I'm very, very delighted to introduce to you Ruth Lund, MD of the Legacy Centre, and Lisa Brothers, CEO of civil engineering firm Nitsch Engineering in Boston. Now, let me just say, Ruth's company, Legacy Centre, is a company that provides a comprehensive cultural alignment service with a focus on leadership and top team development. And let me just briefly say that Nitsch Engineering has been going for 26 years. Lisa has been with the company from the beginning. She's been the CEO for the last 5 years, and this is a rare thing, a woman-owned engineering firm, civil engineering firm. So without further ado, I'd just like to say hello and welcome to Ruth and to Lisa. Hi Ruth, hi Lisa. How are you both today, and where are you speaking from? Hi.
Hi, it's great to be here with you, Jay. Thanks so much for the invitation to do this, and thanks to my friend and colleague Lisa for joining us. And I'm hailing from snowy Portsmouth, New Hampshire this morning.
Ah, snowy. And where are you calling from, Lisa?
So good morning, and I'm also thrilled to be here to support Ruth, because I enjoy so much working with her. I am in Boston, Massachusetts, and we are also in the middle of a spring snowstorm. So, yeah, glad that I could make it into the city this morning to be here.
Well, thank you both for your time. And what we are going to explore today, the theme that we've put out there and to discuss, is around how to understand, how to enhance, and how to protect a strong culture in order to develop new leadership when the organisation is growing. So this is our topic that we're going to dig into, and in working in this on that agenda, you have both been on a journey together, and so I've got a few questions to ask you to help us understand what that journey has been like, and to share some insights and wisdom that you've gathered along the way. So I'm going to open with to ask you, how did it get initiated? Who approached who, and why? So what brought this to happen?
Sure.
Ruth.
So I was invited to speak at a Vistage local group, and Vistage, for those who may not be familiar with it, is a CEO forum. It's chaired by a retired CEO, and it brings together usually upwards of 12 to 16 CEOs monthly together. And I was invited in to speak to this group, and Nitsch was represented by their CEO, Lisa Brothers, that morning when I was there. And I had been explaining to them how the Legacy Center was developing this very intentional process of coming alongside organizations and helping them really codify their culture and look for ways to protect it, improve it, grow it over time. And it struck a chord. So, Lisa, I'll just hand that over to you at this point.
Yeah, so I was sitting there listening to Ruth speak, and was thinking about the journey that I had started with our company when I became president and CEO 5 years ago. We really wanted to talk about, and we were trying to define what we at the time called our niche experience. And we've done a lot of things around that process, but still really couldn't figure out how to move that forward, because we were really planning on growing the company, and I wanted to make sure that we were intentional about keeping what we had with our company, the culture that we had in place. And so just listening to Ruth about, I'm an engineer, so metrics, being able to measure it and being able to create behaviors that support the values that we've always had in the company was extremely interesting to me. And so right after the lunch, Ruth and I got together, and Ruth came to the company and met with myself and our HR manager, and we kind of walked through some of the things that Nitsch Engineering had been doing, but learning more about the Legacy Center really crystallized for me a way to really make it intentional. How do we really maintain what we have as we continue to grow? So that was the beginning of our journey. I was absolutely excited about it.
Thank you. So as you worked through how to build, how to protect, how to enhance the culture. For you, for each of you, what was the aha moment or the critical insight? So rolling forward to when you're deep in the work, what is it that actually was key to generating the outcomes for you?
Well, I'll start and just say one of the ahas for me is this was probably the first time I was working with an organization whose culture was out of the gates really strong, really established, and definitely already being focused on. And so when we did the cultural values assessment and we're meeting together and pulling it all apart, seeing the levels of alignment and the very low entropy in the organization was fantastic, but also recognizing the import that was for the leadership team to together see that what they had been building was in fact getting traction. It was appreciated. It was being experienced at great degrees. And then they were able to, as Lisa said earlier, they were able to do the work with us to make sure that the values that they had espoused in the past were still the values that they wanted to remain focused on moving forward. And so there was a little bit of massaging to them to say, as we move forward, this is what we really need to make sure is in place. And it wasn't any wholesale change. They have a fantastic culture there, but there definitely was a realigning and even a recommitment, I would say, to the values that had brought them there and what was going to take them into the future. And then lastly, the power of getting a whole executive team aligned around what does it look like. It's one thing to say that we've got this this balance of home and work that's critical to the success of our culture and our business. It's another thing to really pull apart, well, what does that really look like here, and how do we protect this? So drilling it into the behaviors and getting them aligned around that and all feeding into what that looks like was a very, very, very powerful piece of work for me to be engaged in with them.
Thank you, Ruth. So, and Lisa, hand to you.
So for me,
you were on the other side of the dance with the relationship around these challenges. So
absolutely. So for me, a couple of aha moments were when we did the assessment of our leadership team first. So that was the first thing we did, and we were very much aligned around core values that had been with the company since 1993. And so that was really an aha moment for me. And then I really appreciated the cultural values assessment that we did with the whole company and how that came back. But then I think the biggest impact personally was when we did the workshops. We did 3 separate workshops where we rolled it out 30 people at a time, and so Ruth and I obviously rolled out our core values, and it was the results from the assessment from the tool, and the validation that we heard from people that had been with the company 25 years, 20, 15 years, people that had been with us, less than 5 years, and then we had some new people who had been with us, maybe 4 months, all reaffirming everything that is what our culture is all about, and all really, really being engaged and really wanting to make sure that we were intentional about moving our company forward and keeping what we have that's so special. To me, was an amazing, amazing feeling, an amazing aha moment, because I think a lot of people say, yeah, we have a great culture, we have a great culture, we have a great culture. But now I can say we really do. We've measured it, tested it, we've worked on behaviors to support it, and we're going to be intentional about that as we continue to grow the company. And to me, that's really powerful, extremely powerful, and it makes me very, very excited about it. So that was really, really, really powerful for me.
That's brilliant. And did that journey? So did it feel different as a place to be working for you after that?
I think what it did. I think it really made me feel like that, like I said, I always felt like we've had a great company, but I really felt like everybody was on the same page with all of us, and that people didn't take what we have for granted, which, sometimes people do. And to hear people talk about, we've had a lot of people leave and come back, and they only leave to move across the country to go with a spouse. We have very low turnover. But to hear those people who left and worked someplace else and then came back to our company, talk about why they came back and why this place is so special, and to have all the other employees hear about what was so special about our company, really was really heartwarming. it really made me feel really great.
Thank you. Very wonderful to hear that. So just looking to see any questions in the chat box coming in. Please remember, if there's aspects of this discussion that you'd like to hear a bit more about, you can type your questions into the chat box as we're going through, and then we can loop back to pick up anything you're particularly interested in. So moving on then, Lisa, on reflection as a leader, what do you feel has been your personal journey through this process, so your challenges, or anything that's been an awareness for you as a challenge in delivering this work?
So first of all, we have engineers and land surveyors here, very scientific driven, and Ruth and I started a lot of our sessions saying this is soft and touchy feely kind of work, but it's really important work, and I need you to take it seriously, because I have worked in places prior to this company where it wasn't a good place to work, where people didn't do things that were ethical, and I actually was becoming physically ill. And I always said to myself, if I ever became in a position of leadership within a company, that I would make sure that that company did things and created an environment where people wanted to come to work, enjoyed working, and enjoyed the work that they did, had challenging work, and felt like that it was being meaningful. So having said that, so it's a challenge to make sure that that the passion that I have gets driven through the company. And I think that leadership work that Ruth has done with us, so we started with our leadership team, went out to the whole company, came back to where she did individual work with our leaders to make sure they were aligned with the behaviors that we created. And now to our new journey, which is that Ruth is working directly with our HR manager to develop a leadership platform for us to continue to train our leaders in the behaviors that we created that support our culture. Because we've grown 47.7% over the last 5 years. So we onboarded 24 people last year. So it's really important to have these tools in place to make sure, and we have a new office. We used to only be in one spot. We now have another office. So we have to deal with dual cultures. We're going to have a third office this year. So all of these steps that we put in place with Ruth and the Legacy Center is going to make sure that the special company that we have, the environment, continues, and that we have highly engaged employees, because as Peter Drucker says, right, culture eats strategy for breakfast. We have a great company, and we just want to make sure we keep that going as we continue to grow. So for me, the challenges are to make sure that others are as passionate as I am about it and are as authentic about it, because if you're not authentic, people see right through it. You can't force this stuff. You have to be passionate about it. You have to know that it really matters, that you live your values and you express that every single day. The minute you do something that's against one of your values, it's, then you've lost the whole forward momentum, in my opinion. So we're constantly monitoring that to make sure that we focus on our values.
Lisa, thank you for sharing so much from the heart there and such passion, because it is what you're telling is a story of an organisation that's taken itself seriously as a leadership team, gone through a company journey, and is now looking how to institutionalise that in a way that's a healthy system for the future. And that is the whole long-term journey of culture transformation, which is very important sort of understanding to have, that it's a long journey and that it takes constant commitment. So that's really great to hear. And we've had a flurry of questions, so we will come to the questions, everyone. We'll bring your responses in. Before we do that, I just want to come back to Ruth and say thank you, Ruth, for everything you've done with Lisa and the journey that you two have been on together, because together you've created an environment that people come back to, that people thrive in, and that is making the world a slightly better place. So well done, both of you. And I'm sure it's been a lot of work and continues to be. So Ruth, as a practitioner working in the field of cultural transformation, what are your reflections on some of the typical barriers doing this sort of work, and the approach that you've developed helps to manage these?
Sure. Before I answer that, though, Jay, I want to make one comment about what Lisa just said.
Sure.
About her personal journey. I think it's something important that I don't want to miss. And it was a conversation that she and I had at, I think it was the end of the second day where I had been working with her executive team, and we were really pounding out those values and behaviors together. Had this really rich, deep and wide conversation all day. We were kind of exhausted, mentally exhausted. But she was just exuberant, and she said, this is the decade that when I'm done with this, I've got to really look at how I become more significant and grow into more significance, or something to that effect. And I remember saying to her, Lisa, you are piloting an organization where you have over 100 people who walk in to this healthy, rich culture. They're thriving, they're growing, they're hitting on all cylinders, and that's cascading out into their families and out into the world. It's no small thing. This is significant. And if more business leaders really recognized the place that they have to create a workplace of thriving people, what an impact that would have. And that's the heartbeat of why we do what we do at the Legacy Center. We get to work with leaders like this. So I just wanted to mention that real quickly because I think it's pretty key. As far as barriers, it's probably the barrier that all of us face whenever we're doing something that is long-term and not immediate. The work that we do requires such a deep level of gut commitment from the CEO. As a matter of fact, we don't even engage with organizations unless we are very clear. The first step in our process is the step of commitment. And we have to be really ensured that the CEO and his or her executive team really recognize the import of this is a long-term process. It isn't a one and done. It requires a tremendous amount of perseverance, of new rituals and disciplines to be in place, of accountabilities, and it also gets impacted by the tyranny of the urgent. And so we go into these relationships kind of putting that expectation out there. It's going to be challenging for you to keep your eye on this ball as much as you're really going to want to. So where we've been really successful is when we have CEOs like Lisa who get it. They understand that they would never stop analyzing their finances. They would never stop analyzing their processes, for efficiencies and impact. Why would they ever stop looking at one of the most critical elements of their success, which is their culture and the dynamics with their people? And so we're getting more and more CEOs who get this, that it can't be neglected. It is long-term. It'll go on for the eternity of that business. It will never be done. And it's their leadership and ability to help their team see the import of that has been the most important. But barrier, this is long-term work, and it's not work that necessarily impacts today. It may there may be some low-hanging fruit that you impact today, but you're really putting a platform in place for the future when you do this work.
Great insights, and thank you very much. So I'm going to pick through our questions, the audience's questions, and one that links straight onto what you were just saying there is Lisa, what's your suggestion as to how to sensitize a leader who is not positively predisposed to wanting to improve culture, typical engineer leader?
I'm sorry, Jay, you were breaking up. I just
really?
I just lost you for a second. Yep. Okay,
can you hear me clearly now?
I can. Yep.
Okay. If the audio fails at my end, I'll switch providers and come back quickly. Meanwhile, you've got questions in the chat box that you can look at. So
okay.
Let me just say that. So the question is Lisa's suggestions for engaging a more typical engineer leader who is not predisposed to wanting to do company culture. Quick thoughts on that. And we've got quite a lot of questions, so just to touch on each one would be great.
So what we did, this is part of the process and the journey that I talked about with Ruth, is that first we evaluated our values as a company, our leadership team as a whole, but then the individual leaders. And so that's the work where Ruth did one-on-one coaching and mentoring with individual leaders based on how they were living our values. And so for me, that was a critical piece for getting some of those engineers on board with something that wasn't quite so what they do every day, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if I could just jump on that a little bit, Jay, it's really about helping leaders find themselves in the value and authentically desiring to have those behaviors part of their leadership skill sets, abilities, and reflection in the organization. So, that's a very deep and personal conversation. So to Lisa's point, especially with the executive team, we spent a lot of time in the one-on-ones with them so that they felt a natural alignment to these values and these behaviors.
Yeah, so actually their shift is sourced from where they're at in their values and being with them. Yeah, great, thank you. Okay, jumping randomly then, well actually not randomly, I'm going to go to the order that they were put into the system. What about buy-in across the organisation? Any roadblocks?
Any roadblocks? I don't think that anybody threw up a really hard roadblock. I think people just we're all on the journey together, trying to figure out what this process was like. I don't think we really have. I think that because we're very transparent here, we're very open, and I think people just understood right from the get-go why we were doing it, articulated that really well, and I think that people have really jumped on board, and because people really want to preserve what we have. I don't know, Ruth, have you really seen any roadblocks?
Yeah, the only thing that is coming to mind for me is when you do this body of work and you really begin to clarify what the behaviors look like, behaviors outside of that get heightened or more focused on. For example, or behaviors that are in conflict with something that's been very clearly stated. So I think every organization goes through a little bit of a season of recognizing that when you really get serious about your culture, you're spotlighting when it's off a great deal more. And not that happened a lot at Nitsch, but I know we've had conversations, and you have such a platform. This is not aligned with our behaviors and our values. It's just right. It gives everybody a very clear bar and expectation. But I also think it heightens the awareness of when it's misaligned. And so that can be a little uncomfortable, especially as you're getting used to having some of those conversations with people, and people are used to talking about it more openly and more transparently.
Okay, cool. And moving on to the next one, I'm going to move us through in the hope that we can respond to as many questions as possible. Great story, thanks for sharing. Lisa, could you say what you mean by being intentional in the continued efforts to maintain strong culture?
Sure. So for us, our work with the Legacy Center is continuous. And what has been really important to make sure that it maintains that is, like I said earlier, Ruth is working with our HR manager to do the leadership development platform, but we're also redoing our cultural values assessment this year to check in. The first one we did was in 2014, and so we did a lot of work over the past 2 years putting our behaviors in place and doing some leadership training. And so it'll be interesting to see what our new cultural values assessment says this year, and the intention is to do that every other year. We've onboarded some very senior people, and they've been scheduled to have their individual 360 reviews after they've been here for about 8 months to a year, so they can get used to us, and so we can see how they're aligning with our culture. So that's what I mean about being intentional, is all of those things happen every time a new person comes in. We have our behavior cards. We talk about them at company meetings, and we're constantly reinforcing those. And I've even encouraged people, to Ruth's point, when somebody's doing something that's not something of our value, I've experienced that a lot of people can have those difficult conversations, and so I encourage people to take our behavior card and say, I'm experiencing this from you, and this isn't one of our behaviors and our values. Can we please talk about it? So it's all of those kinds of ways to imprint it in our company moving forward. It's a journey that we're going to continue and check in and have a platform developed and continue to train our leaders.
That's really, really great. I mean, you've covered a couple of questions in there as well, one about onboarding senior managers. Yeah. One person has asked if you're willing to share what the entropy scores have been over the time that you've been using the CTT. I don't know whether you have that to hand or want to share it. Or...
Yeah, they're great numbers. I can't forget them. So when Ruth did our leadership team, which was 11 of us, our entropy was 1%. When we did the CVA for the whole company, our entropy was 4%. My personal entropy was 3%. and I won't get into the rest of my leaders. But so yes, we've had some really nice numbers. The one that really knocked my socks off was the 4% for the company. Was really nice validation. And then the other one that was really, I thought was really nice was the observed value and desired value that was in both categories. That was really powerful, was employee recognition. So it was in our observed values and our desired values, which made me really happy because we work really hard to make sure that we recognize our employees and that they feel like they're important and engaged. So having that in both of those categories meant a lot to me personally.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing a bit more of the detail. People are really interested in this story. So Ruth, did you start with the LVA and then go and use the CVA? Could you clarify the process again?
We did a small group assessment initially with the executive team. That was our very first step. And then the second step was to do the full organizational CVA, and then we moved into LDRs with every person on the executive team. And that's part of the process and the body of work that the Legacy Center begins with an organization. And then before we actually roll it into the organization and start really creating these interactive workshops, I spend time with each of the executive team members around their reflection in the organization, etc.
And in this case, there were espoused values in the organisation to begin with, weren't there? And someone's asking a question about that, whether that existed already. Yeah.
Yeah, we had core values from 1993, and to be honest with you, we didn't change those because they were core to who we are. We tweaked them and maybe added one more value. So we increased. Actually, we added two new values, but yeah, we didn't really. The baseline was there, and we didn't change it. We added a couple of things to it.
Okay. But there's been a journey there in terms of its meaning, how it's embraced, how it's lived, those core values, I mean.
Yes. Yeah, so we were living them for a very long time, but this was a chance to actually measure it.
And what are your core values? I'm curious. What
are our core values? We all have nice handy-dandy little statements here. So I will tell you, it's community involvement, continuous improvement, quality and safety, client care, organizational health, ethics, and transparency.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. I didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
That's okay.
I got really curious about what is this culture that you're living and breathing. And okay, so and then I've got another question. Ruth and Lisa, thank you for offering us this webinar this morning. Can you share some more of the transformational ahas you witnessed in your leadership team as you conducted the CVA and some of the actual concrete interventions that followed? You may have already said, that question may have been posted before you've said some of the things that you've said, but if there's anything you wish to add to that.
Well, I think one thing for me personally, because a lot of our obviously executive team reports to me, is that it was really, I had one person in particular who I'd been coaching and trying to work on some things with this person, and then doing the LDR and hearing it from his peers and people that worked with him, and then the coaching through Ruth was a real aha moment for this person. And I have actually seen this person work really hard on some of the things that I personally have been trying to work with them over the past year. So it was nice to get a different perspective for this person to realize how people are experiencing him, and I think that's been really helpful. I've seen a shift in this person based on the work that he did with Ruth on his 360, and it's been very, very wonderful to see, actually.
Well, thank you again for sharing so much with us, Lisa. And I'm noticing that we're at time, and there are one or two questions. I think we've covered most of them, and I just want to thank everyone for their interest and participation and questions. And I just want to say to you all and to people watching after this that Ruth is going to be with us in Toronto in September for the CTT International Conference. And we'd be delighted to have you there, Ruth, as you're going to share with us more of your experiences with your clients, such as Lisa, and the wisdom and approach that you have, and to give us sort of an overview of the approach that you've developed within the Legacy Centre. So very grateful that you're going to bring that to the community, and some insights to it, at least, in some of your stories and experiences. So I'd just like to say thank you both for giving your time, your energy, your honesty, responding so well on the spot to all these questions, that's us complete. So is there anything you would like to say to close, to complete, Lisa, Ruth?
Just thanks for the opportunity, and thanks to all of the other CTT practitioners that are out there doing really important work with people that are making a difference. And many thanks to my dear friend and colleague, Lisa Brothers, who's just been a joy to work with.
Well, thank you, Ruth. And you know I'm passionate about this, and I thank all of you for making sure that this can get brought into other people's organizations, because it is a really good tool, and it's really, really helped us be intentional about where we want to continue to grow the company. So thank you for that.
And our sincere thanks to you for being an example to other leaders and sharing your journey with us. Thank you very much. Thank you both.
You're welcome.
Well, I'm looking forward to what's next at the conference and hopefully see you all there. Thank you for your time, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.